This is Sarah Squires bringing you behind the headlines in today's edition of WyoToday Newsroom. Today, I'm so fortunate to be joined here in the studio by Wyoming State Senator Cale Case. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Sarah. Really a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Now, Senator Case, I know that you have been a leader here in Wyoming and this part of the state for many years. You've done so much door knocking and really reaching out to voters and your neighbors that there are probably very few folks out there who don't know who you are. But for those of us who might be listening today, tell us a little bit about yourself.
You're probably right. I think I know a lot of people in my district and in Fremont County, but I was born and raised in Lander, and in fact, Sarah, I live in the same house that I was brought home from the hospital and I was born in 1958. I went to public schools. I graduated from Lander Valley High School in 1976. All my brothers and sisters went to that school. Little vignette. Last week I went to the funeral for my fifth grade teacher, Doris Murray, and she's like one of the greatest teachers. But so after high school, I went to the University of Wyoming. I was very intrigued with the economics program there. Ended up getting a doctorate in economics, and I went to work for a while for the state of Illinois in their public utility regulatory agency. But when my mother passed away, I came back to kind of be with my father, and he was older than my mom, and so I became one of the first kind of telecommuters, we called them then. Now they call them remote workers. But then I started a career with ended up being with Coopers and Lybrand and worked overseas, but always based out of Lander. Became interested in politics at a very early age. Really happy to serve the community in the Wyoming legislature. I've evolved over all those years, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come here and talk to you today.
Yeah. Now, Senator Case, I do have a glossy piece of paper in front of me here, and I have to, if you're watching, this is straight from the source here. This is campaign material from you, Senator Case. I know we've had some misinformation out there, but I wanted to go over, some of the priorities that you're talking to voters about as you go door to door, as you're kind of in the home stretch here. Of course, tomorrow is primary day. What are some of the top issues that you're hearing from constituents, some of the top issues that you're really thinking about here in this home stretch?
Well, I think that first off, people would like their government to work. They are tired of the acrimony that has characterized, state and higher levels of government. And they really do like people that put their shoulder to the wheel and get to work. They would like to see kind of civility restored in the legislature. That's my theme song. I've managed to work through different administrations, and in the Senate, we actually put together a coalition to counter the Freedom Caucus dominated House. But our coalition includes very conservative people, the traditional Republicans, and even a couple of Democrats. And that's important. People like that. People really like that. Property taxes are on their mind, but they're more worried about public services, Sarah. They're more worried about what's happening to ambulances, what's happening to our roads, our municipal governments. They are worried how government's going to provide services, and they're scared of proposals to get rid of property taxes. They really are. They are also worried about public education. Public education has definitely been under threat, especially with the Freedom Caucus driven agenda in the House. We have people that are very anti-public education. I'm a product of public education. We built really the best public education system in the country. Proud of it. Want to keep and support it and nurture it and make it better. They're also very concerned about federal issues. I'll tell you, I hear about the congressional race at every door almost. People are really tired and they're very unsure how to vote in that race. But really, the bottom line, when they're voting for me, they're thinking about local issues and what's the future of our state. And we talk a lot, Sarah. Do you know the Wyoming's future? We've got to be really careful here because we have the fastest aging population. The over 65 plus group is growing the fastest in Wyoming. We have the most loss of our young people. So play this out in 10 years. How is Wyoming going to be a thriving economy if we don't pay attention to these issues? Right now, we're the slowest growing state in our region. We have the slowest rate of population growth, and our economy is the slowest growing.
Yeah, I in conversations with voters, with candidates, I do hear all these topics come up here, and it's interesting. Senator Case, I didn't realize I should have been calling you doctor all these years, but having that extra background in economics specifically, and looking at sometimes we get sort of wild ideas thrown out there that just maybe seem popular at the doorstep, but once you really start unpacking them, they just don't really add up. How do you approach things like property taxes, things like balancing the budget, things like ensuring that we are, fiscally responsible with our state budget? How do you approach those issues with an economic lens?
Boy, that's a great question. You know, just at the very basic level, if low taxes were an economic driver, Wyoming would be in the catbird seat. But the truth is that people want government services to function, and they expect more than they used to expect. And while getting rid of property taxes is a very populist thing, and it rings true for some people, not very many actually, but it really does. It's a very dangerous proposition. Let's just go down that road for a second, because property taxes fund local services. They don't, and not a nickel goes to the state. Okay, they're mainly fund your county, which gets 25 mills, your cities and towns, which get 8 mills, but mostly it goes to schools. And, that is the bulk, onwards of about 40 mills. And then we have mills for the community colleges. We have mills for special districts like the Conservation District, for Fire District. Those are local services funded with your property taxes. Now, if we got rid of those property taxes, how would we make that up? How would we make that work? And I think folks are quick to say, well, the state could make it up. Think about that for a second. I'm not sure how we would make it up, because how would we do it? What would be the amount? We would have to have property tax. You still have to calculate the property taxes. Then somehow the state would have to get money for that. And they point to Wyoming's great amounts of savings. But what people don't really understand is most of the funds that Wyoming has are earmarked. One is our retirement. We're not going to cash in our public employees' retirement and our teachers' retirement. We have a workers' comp trust fund. We're still not fully there on solvency with that. We were underwater with workers' comp, and we worked to beef that up. But that's important, because that's how we're going to help injured workers over time. Okay, then the big one is the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, about $11 billion. That's a huge amount of money, makes us very, other states are very jealous of us for that. But there's an important reason for that money, is because that was paid for by the mineral industry to compensate Wyoming citizens and Wyoming future citizens for the loss of the minerals that they will no longer have. It's important we maintain that fund and use it to provide services to present people and future people. I don't want to rate it and make up for property taxes. And here's another deal. If you take and sever someone's connection between the taxes they pay and the services they receive, it's a really bad idea, because it's important that we hold public entities to the fire, and make sure we get value, but also important that people have skin in the game so that they understand what their taxes go for I'm helping to pay for the fire department. So I care about the fire department. I care about how it's run. You sever that, and then we all become trust fund babies. And truly, that's a bad idea. Another proposal down the property tax route is to make it up by increasing the sales tax. We've scoped that out a little bit, and that could mean like a 15, 16% sales tax. But it won't work because it's not even across the state. If you think of a county like Niobrara, they may have a high level of property tax, but they have almost no sales tax. So raising the sales tax, they lose money. Some counties would gain and some would lose, but the distribution is all wrong. It can't even begin to work, and unless all the sales tax money went to the state and was redistributed, sort of like we talked about those mineral taxes earlier. Still a terrible idea, really terrible idea. And I'm not going to support that, and I think people need to think about that more.
Yeah, some people might hate me for saying this out loud, but one of the reasons I moved here, Senator Case, is because the property taxes are low when compared to the services received, when compared to, other states that I frankly wanted to live in. I'm not a big city girl, but, I think that Wyoming's got a lot of great things going for it. Maybe some property tax reform is in order. Are there things that you've considered or that you think are maybe worth, tinkering around with when it comes to reform with property taxes, or maybe kind of just in response to some of the recent changes?
Well, that's a great question too. We recently reinstated an old program that we let go away, and it was the property tax relief program. And it had been on the books, but the state hadn't funded it. So 2 budget cycles ago, Mike Yen, Democrat from Teton County in the House, and Cale Case here in the Senate, we passed a joint amendment to fund that program again. And that has been a very popular program. It helps people that have a need for property tax relief, and it does a great job of funding that tax relief. It's oversubscribed. We put more money into it now. It's a great program. There are other things we could do. But who gets the most property tax relief? Listen, everybody. Teton County homeowners are the ones that benefit from property tax relief. Do we really need to give the billionaires and the multimillionaires in Teton County property tax relief on the backs of local services in our schools? Let's get real about this. So I really need us to understand this issue. There are probably lots of things that we can do to tweak and make the property tax system better. It's a complicated system, but it's been in place for a long, long time, and it overall works pretty darn good. But listen, throwing the baby out with the bathwater and giving tax breaks to billionaires in Teton County is a really bad idea. And we got to believe in Wyoming better than that.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all get behind that. That's not the outcome that I think anyone is looking for. And that's why it's important to be, cautious, careful, and mindful when you go in and start making changes to the system rather than knee-jerk ideas that just seem good on their faces. One of the things that I'm hearing a lot about from voters out there, from candidates, and some real concerns have to do with our natural resources and public lands. The public lands debate has become so hot. I'm curious, what are your thoughts about the debate about public lands and the state's responsibility and what the legislature should be looking ahead at and doing to work on our behalf?
Our public lands are a treasure. They are a treasure. They don't just belong to us. They belong to future Wyoming people.
Yeah.
And we have to protect those public lands. I'm really proud to have been able to do that. And you know what? The sell-off public lands thing, I fought it in the legislature. I am proud to say that you don't even hear those people who have they're hiding under bushes because they don't want to talk about that anymore, because it is our soul in Fremont County. It's in our soul in Wyoming. I love public lands, grew up on public lands. I'm going to protect him with everything I have. Look at Eric Barlow and his commitment to public lands and how his campaign seems to be doing really well because of it. And anyway, I think that was a crazy thing that we went down that road, and it partly was that guy from Utah who led us down there, and I was disappointed in our congressional delegation for not quashing it sooner, but it finally was quashed. And here's a little secret: I'm friends with John Barrasso. We served together. We text back and forth on occasion. I never abuse that. I never lobby him or anything. But on the public lands issue, I broke my own rule. And I sent him a short note about public lands. And he sent me a comforting note that he didn't expect that bill to come out. And I was very, very relieved. And so I'm just telling you that heart and soul here.
Yeah. It seemed like there were, some of our elected leaders came out strong on that. Now they've kind of backtracked and realized, this is very unpopular with voters and it doesn't make sense for Wyoming. And it makes you kind of wonder once in a while where they're coming up with this stuff and why they're supporting them. And I'm wondering how you approach legislation, how you approach taking a position on issues. Where do you draw your insight from and how do you make those important decisions?
This is where my experience comes in a little bit. And let's face it, I've been in a long time. But that gives me kind of a rudder that I trust my own rudder, and I can trust what things are happening. I've seen a lot of things before. And I'm really annoyed by populist-driven bills that have titles, catch titles we call them, the short title, that are designed to appeal. They're red meat kind of things that you can throw to the voters. I knew when I was voting in the past legislative session and before that a bill was being put up with a national agenda that didn't really apply to Wyoming, but it had a title that they knew they could get me to vote no on, and it was a title that would be very appealing, and they could use it against me in the election. And those are setups. They're not derived by Wyoming people. The Wyoming people can't even explain the bill. When some of the Freedom Caucus guys that are carrying this junk, they can't even explain the bill. So you got to be wary of that. You've got to recognize it, and I can spot that. It's like a neon sign. I can spot those kind of bills. I'm really good at reading bills, Sarah. I can find out the gist of a bill. I can tear it apart. I've seen it before. I know how that section fits in there, and I can make up my mind about bills very quickly. And many of them I've seen before. And I'll tell you, the ones from out of state that are part of a national agenda, like the National Freedom Caucus agenda, stay away from those. They are not a good fit for Wyoming. They make no sense. And so I'm good at picking the junk out of I can pick out the gems too, but I'm really good at sorting through that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting watching the state legislature and people maybe pulling away from, the Freedom Caucus a little bit. I've noticed maybe there's some folks who are saying, you know what, maybe I'm going to be, my own candidate here. And, I get sometimes, I think people get a little overwhelmed with these labels and the idea that our politics is about which flavor of the week that you might affiliate yourself with. And we're looking for that grassroots part of politicking here, campaigning and, picking out priorities, based on the ground here at home and representing people here. And I'm wondering what that really means to you. The idea of a grassroots priorities and approach in how you bring important issues to Cheyenne for people right here at home.
There's a lot there. These primary elections, they're a chance for all of us to listen to the wishes of the voters of any particular party. And so I'm, my ears to the ground, but I think I've got a pulse on it, and I really do. I think people are not as Freedom Caucus orientated as perhaps swept the field a couple of years ago. It swept the field with a very low turnout. Do you know that? They're more interested in this primary election. It will have a better turnout, and I think that's good. And then we're going to see what the grassroots really say. And I hope that the parties listen to this too, because, for the first time in history that I'm aware of, one of the parties, the Republican Party, actually endorsed candidates prior to the primary. And really, I'm kind of insulted by that. Well, partly because I didn't get they didn't endorse me. But, rather than sour grapes, let's look at the philosophy here. A primary election is a chance for the voters that you represent in the Central Committee or in the state legislature to tell you what they want. You better listen to them and not tell them how to vote. So not only that, it violated state law, but the Republican, of all the election laws that have been broken in Wyoming, the only ones I can point to were broken by the Republican Party, and I'm sorry to say that. I'm kind of ashamed of that.
Yeah.
We had donations in the last go-around. We had a few other instances, and we had the lawsuit in Thermopolis about the makeup of the Central Committee, and I meant Hot Springs County, not Thermopolis. And then we have this issue where they really are going against the law to try to test it. So, everybody talks about election laws being broken. There's only been 4 cases of election fraud that really have been shown to be truly intentional, et cetera, in a couple of decades.
Yeah.
But there have been intentional violations of election law by one of our political parties. Yeah. Why is that not bothering people? Bothers me greatly. So anyway, I think the grassroots are where it's at. All the changes that have been made in election law have encouraged more people to join the Republican Party. And so they better listen to their new grassroots because they created this one.
Yeah. When we talk about, grassroots values and campaigns and that relationship with people here on the ground, I think kind of the polar opposite is something that we're seeing hanging off of doorknobs here these days. And, you're finding them in your mailboxes. And this is out of state, far flung PACs that are funding kind of these anti-campaigns, where they'll come in with these discredited claims about candidates and kind of smear campaigns. And this is, of course, big bucks that are coming in. They're not from Wyoming. And oftentimes they don't really quite know what they're talking about. And it can make for a confusing puzzle for voters to sort of navigate through. And I'm wondering, Senator Case, what should voters be thinking about when sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, when you've got all these glossy campaign flyers making these claims that are from, different PACs that sometimes are, thousands of miles away from here. And it seems like they care very little about what's happening right here on the ground.
Yeah, I think people are really tired of the negativity and outside money. And, this kind of goes back to Citizens United, which was a court case that went to the United States Supreme Court, and where free speech was, the Supreme Court ruled that free speech is very important and it has to be protected, even though the entity might be a corporation or other protagonists. So really that opened the door to third party unlimited spending in elections. And that's why we have all these third party groups coming around and trying to influence our elections. The one that's been real active in my race and also with Representative Larson, who shares my district, is Make Liberty Win. dig in to make Liberty win. They're from Virginia. They don't have a cent of Wyoming money that has been reported in the newspaper. And there's been two great stories, one Cowboy State Daily and one in WyoFile. Maggie Mullen and Claire McFarland both nailed those, talked about how much money that they put into this local race. Over $14,000 against me. But the same amount almost against Lloyd Larson, and they're going door to door at the same time for both. And then I actually have looked at their mailers or their door hangers, and included with the material against me and Representative Larson is pro statewide Freedom PAC or Freedom Caucus candidates, every single one of them. So they're wrapped up together. So the money they report only a quarter of the spending that actually occurred for me, and a quarter of the spending that occurred for Lloyd, and the other half is pro for the other candidates. They do it all at the same time. So the dollars that you see are really deceptive. So that 14,000 is really more like maybe 60,000.
Wow.
You guys, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I had to counter that this year. I could see this coming. So for the first time in my life, with one exception, back when I ran for Congress, I took a $50 donation from Wyoming gun owners. But I took PAC money this time, and I had to. And I'm proud to say I raised more money than I ever have. This election has cost me more money than all my other elections put together. But I'm fighting this kind of image.
Yeah.
It's really serious, and it's happening all around the state. It's happening statewide. It's various different groups. They're so terribly negative. Have you guys got enough mailers out there? I've been saving them. They would cover a huge wall now, and they're getting bigger. The latest one for like Foster Freeze, it's like a newspaper page, you know. Anyway, and there's so much going on. And I think people, though, Sarah, the good thing is a couple years ago, this happened also. But I think people have gotten smarter and they understand where this money is coming from. And frankly, the opponents against me, at least, they haven't done a very good job. AI generated stuff, although I thought I looked great as Superman, by the way. But they have their facts wrong in many, many instances, and it's demonstrably wrong. And they hire these poor young kids to come go door to door, and the kids don't know anything about Wyoming. They're very committed to their cause, but they kind of got it wrong. I think, thankfully, and this is the best thing that we have going, is that people are kind of getting tired of it. It's ineffective, and I think this election will show that this is ineffective. And that's the best way we can stop it in the future.
We're kind of in the final stretch here, Senator Case, both for the show, but also for the election. The primary is coming up here tomorrow. And I'm wondering, what are you going to prioritize here as you walk down that final stretch, as you talk to voters on the ground here in Fremont County about, your leadership, your experience, and your dedication to the state of Wyoming, to this part of the state and the legislature?
Well, I can't wait to get out. I'm going to hit the senior center for lunch today. It's very uplifting, and I qualify as a senior now for the first time. But I'm going to spend some time door to door this afternoon. I love that. I get a good supercharge when I talk to people, and they pick me up. Looking forward to tomorrow. I'll probably be in my usual spot, waving the crowds going to vote, and I'm supercharged. I'm encouraged by people's thumbs up that they're giving me, and the comments on my Facebook and the website. And just last night, Sarah, I got a $1,500 donation from our governor, Mark Gordon.
Oh, wow.
It came in on my website. Unbelievably. Thank you, Governor. And that's a real boost in the arm, and people have been so great. Tomorrow night, I'm going to lay low, though, because, I don't want to be cocky. Don't take this for granted. Please get out there and vote, and we'll see how the results come in.
Absolutely. Well, it's been such a pleasure. Today is a sponsored show by Case for Senate. We're talking to Wyoming State Senator, District 25, Cale Case. Thank you so much for your insight, your leadership.